I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to Conversations with Al McFarlane. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to have you along. I see my colleagues Yusuf Mjini from St. Paul is here, and Kamal King from Atlanta. Gentlemen, how you doing today? Good to see you.
Fine, thank you. Good afternoon, brothers.
I'm doing good. Am I on? Can you hear
You're
me?
on? Yeah, I see you.
Yeah.
Yusuf, you're in the dark kind of Yusuf. I don't know if you got a light in front of you or can you put one in front of you?
I do.
I hear you perfectly.
Okay. I'm not sure why the camera is dark. I've got a couple of important stories to share with you, Al.
Let's go. Yeah, go ahead.
Number one, Dr. Julius Garvey, the last living son of Marcus Garvey, will offer a keynote address this afternoon at 1 o'clock at a place called the Pulse Institute. And if you Google Dr. Julius Garvey Pulse Institute within the next 30 minutes, you can get a free web link to hear his presentation at 4 o'clock this afternoon on why the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey ought to be exonerated and appreciated. Number one. Number two, and that's
give the link information again, please, Yusuf.
Dr. Julius Garvey Pulse Institute. If you Google that, the event will come up and you can register to get the free web link to hear the keynote lecture. And that's within the next 30 minutes. That will be open. The second point of information is that the officer responsible for the murder of Philando Castile, Geronimo Yanez, has now been hired by the Fort Worth Police Department. Okay? And he will replace Aaron Dean, the officer who shot and killed an unarmed black woman recently and retired or left the force. So Geronimo Yanez is back in the saddle, this time in Fort Worth, Texas. So if you know anyone in Fort Worth, Texas, or have any connection to any of the civil rights or Black Lives Matter community-based advocacy organizations, please let them know. And that was a recent hire. Life goes on. It seems like never a dull moment. They have identified one of the people responsible for the death of the 4 young black people in their late 20s, near 30, whose bodies were discovered in an abandoned car in a cornfield in Wisconsin. And they are looking for Anthony Suggs as an interested party. And the news media is showing his photograph. And they're looking, I understand, for one other person to try and get additional information on the unfortunate deaths. They say there's no connection to drugs or organized crime, but the police are baffled in terms of exactly what happened or why the 4 young people, 2 males and 2 black males and 2 black females, were murdered.
And among them a sister and brother, as a matter of fact. Take a minute, Yusuf, and tell people about that tragedy as much as you know from what you've read and are hearing in community. We are obviously heartbroken, devastated. I think the entire community has been reaching out to see who we know, if there are families we know that may have been affected by that, because the last names are familiar.
Yeah,
I did call one of my contacts and ask her if that was her family. She said she didn't know. But
it is the grandson of Dennis and Naida Presley. Naida was the director of the Aurora St. Anthony Community Development Project, and Dennis was a boxing coach for many years. The Presley girl is the great niece of Valerie Presley, well known in the community. And one of the young men, the boyfriend of the other young girl who was murdered, is Lois Foreman III. And he has to be some relation to Reverend Lois Foreman, but I'm not certain whether that is his son or his grandson, but our prayers certainly go out to all of them. The other young man was the stepbrother of the Sturm girl, and Foreman was the boyfriend of the young lady, and the Presley boy um, was connected to the Presley girl
Mm-hmm.
was the best friend and confidant of the other young ladies. So it's really a tragic incident. They were at a bar, the Shamrock Bar in St. Paul on Saturday night, and their bodies were discovered 65 miles east of the Twin Cities. And for people who are not familiar, St. Paul and Minneapolis are about 15 minutes from the Minnesota-Wisconsin border, and they were found 65 miles east of St. Paul, near Menominee, Wisconsin, western Wisconsin, and not too far from Madison, and not quite halfway between the Twin Cities and Milwaukee, in a cornfield. And the farmer discovered them on Sunday morning. The vehicle they were in had been driven about 60 feet into the cornfield to try and disguise it or hide it. And, as I said, the police are baffled because they have no idea why these young people were murdered or for what cause, but they're saying it does not appear to be drug related or connected to organized crime. So we're really at a loss until they uncover and make public more.
My understanding, Yusef, is that they were shot. The deaths are by shooting,
Yeah.
and that from what I read, there is gas station video of the vehicle in which the four were transported and left at a gas station. Somebody fueling up that car, and the commentary I saw said that it appeared the four were already dead in the car. That's from video. So I don't know how reliable it is.
Apparently, there was another car following the vehicle in which they were found, but I do not believe it was their vehicle. They left the bar in a separate vehicle, the four of them together, mm-hmm. with someone, and that's the vehicle that they were. It's believed that's the vehicle that they were discovered in. Mm-hmm. So very tragic, and a lot of prayers going up this morning for the families of those four young people. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they come from good, solid families too.
Yeah.
It's not like they were homeless.
I'm thinking that the Presley, Dennis and Naida, aren't they grands or sons and daughters of Red Presley?
Yep, Red.
Red Presley, celebrated law enforcement leader for a generation or two.
Yeah, Red and their mother, Dennis's mother was Virginia, and Naida Presley is a member of the Neal family, which is the black family of longtime residents here in St. Paul. Roger Neal, Winifred Neal, cousin is Teresa Neal, was a principal in St. Paul schools, and just a real tragedy.
Dr. Peter Hayden, good to see you, my friend. You're muted. You're on mute. You're on mute still, but unmute. Kamal, good to see you. So my thinking, like we did in the past couple of weeks, was to ask each of us to lead off with thoughts that are on our minds, and then respond to each other, things we're thinking about, things that we say. And Kamal, let me toss it to you and ask you to sort of share what you're thinking about this week, but also to respond to what Yusef and I have shared about this tragedy, these four murders over the weekend right here in St. Paul, Minnesota. And there's more that I'll talk about in a minute when I bring in Dr. Hayden.
Yeah. First up, to the families of those young people who were murdered, my prayers go out. And there has to be surveillance video of, around the club that they were in, leaving the club, in the club. And
on the highway. Yeah.
Yeah. And along the highway. And, you said something about someone being in fueling a car. So good police work should find out, should put someone in connection with them. And my prayers is that they find out, who this is. I'm hoping that it's not a racial killing, but can't put that aside. What's on my mind? I'm headed to Washington D.C. on Monday. My wife and I have been supporting members of the African American Cultural Museum, and we haven't been to DC in the last 5 years. And I received an invitation from the museum. They're having an open house for members, for initial members. So what's on my mind is getting there. We're driving. Mm-hmm. My wife is still she's still hesitant about being in crowds, but the museum has assured us that, you know, they're limiting the number of people. Everyone will be masked. Mm-hmm. So that's what's on my mind. I'm finally getting a chance to see this museum. Who most of the people who've seen it have told me that it's worth going.
I'm jealous, brother, because I haven't been yet either.
Yeah.
Peter, have you been? Have you seen the museum? Have you seen the museum in DC?
Yeah, you know, and being a veteran, you can go free. All you got to do is have your DD 214. So we've been twice. And Kamal, you really need, I don't know how many days you're going to have, but it'll take 2 solid days to really look at all the things and what they put together. And you start in the basement. Well, I won't tell you.
Yeah, I've been told that.
Yeah, and my point is just take it in. It's our history, and take it in.
Yeah, I'm looking forward. Now. my wife gets on me. You know, it's when I go to a museum, I like to read. I like to, you know, study. You know, she's generally in and out. You know, so we'll work it out.
Kamal, of note is the fact that Dr. Lonnie Bunch, who was the founding director of the museum, is now the secretary of the Smithsonian. So he's responsible for all of the Smithsonian Museum, brother, in Washington, D.C. and in surrounding area. Right. Which is well-deserved and quite incredible.
Yeah, he has superb organizational and fundraising skills. And I think that's what catapulted him up to, they took him out of the African American, said, we need all of this. We need this for all of our museums. Yeah.
You will love it. You've loved it. I have visited there actually before when they were opening previews, and got just a wonderful guided tour. Absolutely phenomenal. And it's inspiring, and things that you're familiar with, that you know, that you've got a personal relationship to the story, the artifact. It's just a lot. And then the building itself, just to look at it, is inspiring, because it gives you the feeling, though it's inverted, of looking at the pyramids. So you have a sense of the grandeur, the splendor of pyramid architecture. And this is that with a modern architectural twist, in that it's an inverted pyramid. One of the things that and the power of that image is crisp and real. It reminded me, Dr. Hayden, once I was coming back home from, somewhere in the neighborhood, and I was driving by the corner of Plymouth and Penn. And Plymouth and Penn is like the center, the epicenter of the Black community in North Minneapolis, where I live and where Dr. Hayden works. And the Urban League is on one corner. There's a funeral home on one corner, health center on one corner, but a new construction built by these brothers, a company called Thor Company, and on a lot that used to be a McDonald's, and before that it was a gas station, but it was a lot that lay fallow for years and years and years, and that typified the general ability of a community to let Black communities lie in decay or misuse or disuse, right? But here, these guys came in with a vision of creating an office and multi-purpose commercial facility on the corner of Plymouth and Penn. And one of the guys that we know was standing out there, pulled me over, I'm driving. He said, Al, look at that. That is our pyramid. That's the pyramid. And so our people connect with visuals, and all of it leads us back to Kemet, to ancient Commission feelings, thoughts, philosophies. And there's this intuitive retention of our Africanity, I believe. And so you'll feel that when you go through that building, and you'll love it as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. Dr. Hayden, we started talking about this question of murders with the 4 that Yusef reported on, but North Minneapolis, same thing over here, on the corner of Glenwood and Penn.
Yeah.
And I think after that, up on 49th and maybe Lendale by the freeway.
The 12-year-old.
The 12-year-old. What do you know about that? Have you read the story?
Not really. What I do know is that 2 12-year-olds was fighting, and the uncle comes out. He's going to intervene, and another 12-year-old had a gun and shot the 12-year-old. Yeah, that's how it's going. I've never felt the way I feel now, in that I have 2 kids. Well, I had 3, but two younger kids. One graduated from Mizzou, University of Missouri. The other one graduated from Mississippi State. And they're here now. One's working for Target. The other one's a first grade teacher. And we come to agreement that stay here with us, save your money, because homes are costing so much, but they're saving money well. And every time they go out, man, Joyce says, drive carefully and be safe. Mm-hmm. My parents never had to say that. They said, don't get in any trouble. They didn't say, you got to be safe now. And my 2 girls, and so now you have people driving down the street, shooting people, and they found that guy down in Illinois who shot the coach out in Hopkins. And I wonder why they can't use that.
That's another story where there was a guy driving, with his kid. He's a coach, and apparently words between 2 motorists, and the one motorist shoots in and kills the driver, the dad, the coach, right? And then he escapes, and they find him just recently in Illinois, arrest him, and they're extraditing him back to Minnesota now. But that's another high profile.
So it becomes a psychological thing for me, our community, naturally, and where you just pray that they get back safely.
Is that the brother who asked the guy not to talk about his wife? His car was blocked in, and he asked somebody, would they please move? And the passenger in the car made a vulgar comment about his wife, who was in the front passenger seat, and he said, please don't talk to that woman like that. That's my wife. And then the guy in the passenger seat shot and killed him. Was that the coach?
No. This is another incident? This is another incident, because the coach we're talking about had just left a baseball game with his son, and he was driving back on 169. And the crazy thing is that you can't label a sector anymore that don't go there because this is happening. It's happening everywhere, and maybe because y'all smarter than me, maybe you can tell me, with the movement to defund the police, basically people understand that in the defunding the police, we can do whatever we want to, because none of those people that you've talked about, Al, the kids, two kids died, one child. These are all 5-year-olds or less, Kamal. And they don't have anyone they don't have any
connection?
No, they have nobody tells or says anything about this. And I think they said it's about in the last month, about 20 shootings or deaths and things of this nature, and nobody is talking. You know,
I mean, law enforcement is not having people tell what they know
that's
about who
right.
the perpetrators are. And one of the things you're saying is that in the case of the 3 children, the 6, 7, and 10-year-olds that were killed, 2 of them died, 1 still hospitalized.
That's right.
Rewards have been raised up to about $150,000 or $80,000 for information leading to arrest, but so far, no viable information has come forward. And so the question you're raising, Dr. Hayden, is why is that? What is it in our community that allows us to continue to harbor bad actors, even in our own houses and in our neighborhoods? And how do we remain silent in the face of this tyranny?
We may need to have a conversation on exactly how defund the police should be defined and what that means, because I think different people read different things into that. That it means eliminate them altogether, or that it means reform the police or re-examine how police are allocated and fund additional resources, counselors, social service people to go on some of the calls, whether it's domestic abuse or mental health or what have you, because we do rely on the police for a lot of incidents for which they're not trained or qualified.
That's right.
Anytime somebody doesn't want to touch a situation with a 10-foot pole, they dial 911. We had a situation here in the capital city in St. Paul where 179 shots were fired in a matter of 2 hours. And there was a party house on Selby and Victoria that had a strip club in it called the Boom Boom Room. And there were 400 people in the house or around the house when the shooting occurred. And they shot up a low-income apartment building across the street, developed by the Rondo Land Trust. And of the 400 people who were present, nobody saw nothing. Nobody knows nothing. And nobody's willing to come forward and try and help, put a stop to this. It's really sad. It's really sad. You got 400 people and 179 shots and nobody saw nothing. They were shooting up inside, shooting up outside, shooting up people's cars, houses, apartment buildings. And I think 8 people got shot and nobody saw nothing. So we've got some work to do in our own backyard.
How does that play out in Atlanta, Kamal? What's the story? I mean, just in 2 fronts. We are almost becoming immobilized, it seems, in this community by the number and the frequency and the horrific nature of the homicides, killings going on. And that's just one thing. Where there also has been an increase of assaults and rapes. But the murders are so graphic that people aren't paying attention to those other crimes that are equally heinous, right? And they're happening right in the middle of the Black community. One of my daughters works for the Department of Public Safety, and I talked with her yesterday about what they're coming up with data-wise. And yeah, she says it's unbelievable. And so that's what's happening here in Minnesota. What's it like in Atlanta? What's the feeling on the community, in the community?
Just by reading the newspaper, it's the same situation with regard to the police, Yusef. Just this week, a Black man a family called the police on a Black man who was having a mental breakdown, and the police went in and end up killing him. I'm not certain whether he was armed. I read the article a couple of days ago, but it gets to be, you read so many that, but that's part of the defunding that I understand, that instead of sending in police, that you send in, mental health workers, and you fund those type of people instead of sending police in who are militarized and that's what they do. You know, if you have a gun, a knife, a pencil, or anything in your hand, you know, then they are justified in killing you if they feel fearful because of this this Supreme Court decision that gives them immunity. So that's happening here. With regard to the shootings, I think that what we're not, the basic problem, and no one wants to attack it, is the amount of guns in this country and the amount of guns in private hands, and, you know, in hands that they shouldn't be in, you know, even if you know, just the amount of guns. And I think when Dr. Hayden was speaking, I was thinking about the crack epidemic. Remember when they, you know, they funded the Nicaraguan war by bringing in crack in the black community and spreading it through the black community. This superfluous spreading of guns. It's a layered. It's more than just having the guns, because white folk have guns, but they ain't killing each other like black folks are killing each other. So it's a complicated issue, but I think that all of these guns in the neighborhoods just doesn't help the situation. I'll give you this example. When I moved to Abidjan, the first weekend that my goods arrived and I was in my apartment, I didn't go out because I was getting my condo together because my goods were there.
Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That Friday, the Ivorians played the Ghanaians in a football game in Kumasi. And as the Ivorians lost the game, and as they were leaving, the Ghanaians bricked their bus, started throwing bricks and stuff at their bus. When they came back across the border, they started killing the Ivorians started killing the Ghanaians in Côte d'Ivoire. Mm. And the only way you can tell a Ghanaian from a Ivorian is one speaks English, one speaks French. Mm. During that weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, they killed 800 Ghanaians. 800 Ghanaians. No guns, with machetes, sticks, stones, feet. And they used this to steal. You know, your neighbors. Here's a Ghanaian, there's a Ghanaian over there, there's a Ghanaian over there. And they just stole the people's stuff. I didn't know what was going on until I walked into my office on Monday, because I had been in my apartment from Friday night, the way God works, from Friday night until I went to work on Monday morning. Mm-hmm. And when I went to work on Monday morning, our guard was a Ghanaian guard. And I asked, well, where's Kwame? Kwame Mark. Kwame Mark. Kwame dead. Why is Kwame dead? And they told me what had happened. And my middle class Ivorian colleagues, a few of them said, you know, I thought about calling you and telling you to stay in. My phone never rung. Mm. So,
and had you been out speaking English, you'd have been in trouble. You'd have been in trouble. You'd have been taken as a Ghanaian.
I would have been in trouble.
Yeah.
But what bothered me more was that my colleagues, and the other thing that I want to put in is that my colleagues, educated Ivorians, black, were thumping their chests about this. They always picking on us. We finally rose up. And the only thing that stopped it was the president of Ghana at the time.
Jerry Rawlings.
Yeah. Jerry Rawlings told the president of Ivori that we're coming over there. Mm-hmm. If you don't get this under control, I'm bringing my army to you. Mm-hmm. And that stopped it. But that just shows you, I don't know what it is with these mass killings and this craziness.
And so the question that frightens me from your story, Kamal, is that it's not inconceivable that things could, for no good reason, go sideways, and not only from outside of our community inside, but from inside or to outside. Anything is possible, and all of it reflects sort of the tinderbox, the mental tinderbox that we live in. It's a pressure cooker in certain ways. On the one hand, these are the best of times, as they say, and on the other hand, it's a difficult time because people are truly feeling pressure all kinds of ways, even amid their success. And if they're living without success, they are feeling pressure doubly, quadruply.
Right.
Can I follow up, Al, on something that Kamal said?
Yeah.
First, that party house in St. Paul, we asked city inspections to go out there the following Monday morning, and they condemned the house, evicted the occupants, because they were renting individual rooms to single men. And the house is being torn down. Good. So I'm hoping it won't be like a dandelion that gets chopped off here and pops up 6 blocks away. The other thing is that there's a documentary that was filmed and produced by an early 20-year-old young man. And the documentary is called Bastards of the Party. And it looked at the Black Panther Party and the US organization in Los Angeles and the attacks by the FBI on the Black Panthers. And these kids, it's called Bastards of the Party because they said when the FBI cracked down on us and the Black Panthers and put the leadership in jail, that young black men had no role models to help them through the rites of passage. And in that documentary, they show wide open boxcars full of automatic weapons. The train pulled that boxcar into Watts and then disconnected from it and pulled off and left it there for people to go in and get the automatic weapons. And then a week later, they pulled in another boxcar, wide open, full of ammunition for the automatic weapons that were in the boxcar the week before. Mm-hmm. And that's when the Crips and the Bloods and the different gangs in Los Angeles began shooting and killing one another because these guns were being brought in from the outside to promote division and competition for drug turf and so on and so forth.
Yeah, because the conduit was, you hit it, was the drug, the crack cocaine. Mm-hmm. So that's where the selling, and so you had to have protection. So there was the guns and things. They're doing that right now in Chicago. At a certain time on the streets of Chicago, you can go and get all the guns and ammunition you need.
You can go to any of these swap meets and get them, with no license, no check, no credit card, no nothing. Or you can have somebody get them for you and then give them to you. Yeah. And they claim they sold them. Yeah, we really need to deal with the background check and some of the precautions for keeping guns out of the hands of people who aren't qualified and don't deserve to own them.
If I may, Al,
go ahead.
If I may, Kwame, my daughter 5 years ago was killed in Buckhead.
Kamal.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Was killed in Buckhead. Graduated from Prairie View A&M. She and some girls went to naturally Atlanta. Everybody wants to see the Black Capitol. She's there in Buckhead. They at a party. She goes out to see whether is the Uber there yet to tell her girlfriends. Dude's on the about a half a block away trying to rob somebody. Starts shooting. The guy runs past her, and she gets the 2 bullets. But, and I'm leading that to, that policeman calls me about every month, lets me know, gives me an update, because he's a person that just fell in love with my daughter's face. And he has her picture next to his family's picture. This is in Atlanta, a policeman. He called me a month ago and said, we've got some leads. The gun that was used has been used in some outside little community that you have outside of Atlanta. There's hope. And so when people start talking about dissemble the police and all these kinds of things, you don't know what you're talking about. I mean, he can't bring Taylor back, but if they find out who the person was, who the shooter was and things, you know how that's going to make me and my family feel?
Better. Yeah. It's not defund the police. I think that there's a culture within the police where they don't tell on each other. You know, there are bad apples all in every profession. But the police need to start policing themselves. And I think that because of the ruckus that was raised last summer, I believe that is coming from the top down. You guys have got to start policing yourselves. And I think that we have a job to do with regard to the bad police. Like when you talked about, what's his name? Geronimo Gomez?
Giannis, yeah.
Yeah. I've got some friends in Fort Worth, Texas, some frat brothers, and I'm going to pass the word to them. And maybe they can do something about, getting the stuff straightened out. Basically, man, I feel like you do, Dr. Hayden. But I pray, I pray every morning for the safety and the protection of, me and mine.
Yeah.
I interviewed.
I'm sorry, I called you Kwame rather than Kamal. So
no problem. Kwame was my uncle.
Okay, good.
Hey, no problem.
Okay.
I interviewed the precinct commander. Well, he was on a program that I was moderating. 4th Precinct commander. 4th Precinct headquarters is a block down from the corner I was talking about earlier on Plymouth and Penn, Kamal. And the 4th Precinct is in a building. It's built on top of a building that used to be the center of Black youth activism. Right. Back in the 60s, there was an organization called The Way. And one of the regulars on this program, and he's a friend of all of ours in the community, a brother named Spike Moss. Spike Moss is from Missouri too, like you and me and Dr. Hayden. He's from a small town, I forgot what town he's from, in Missouri, but he knows our name.
Mexico.
Yeah. he knows our neighborhood where we grew up and knows our stories and everything. But the place where the precinct is, this is background, was outside where there was a standoff in the 60s between Black youth and police. This is before I got here, but I've seen the archival photographs of the phalanx of officers, I think under the leadership of then Mayor Charlie Stenvig. Charlie Stenvig might have been a former sergeant. Detective on the police department, but out and out declared redneck,
Hamburger cop. He was a hamburger cop.
Only reason he's telling y'all that because he was one of the youth that was there at the Way.
It's called The Way, Opportunities Unlimited.
So the youth organization that was there, was kind of the front. It's like Bernard's organization, Social Action Committee of 20, activists, vocal, young, aspiring, Black-led, revolutionaries at one level or another. So over time, that building was demolished, and the police chief, a guy named, what was the police chief's name from New York? Tony Bouza. Tony Bouza was hired from New York.
He was the first cop on the scene when Malcolm X was assassinated. He was the liaison between the New York City Police and COINTELPRO at the FBI.
And he brags about it.
Mm-hmm.
In private, he'll talk about I was in charge.
Yeah.
When Malcolm was killed, I may be saying that wrong, but my feeling of his posture is one that anyway. In fact, let me take that back, because I don't want to libel him. So I don't want to be saying something that is inaccurate. So, but the impression I had was that he is, takes kind of ownership.
When the city council asked him why not build the police substation on Broadway, which is 6 blocks north of Plymouth, rather than Plymouth, he made a vulgar comment about the black community in terms of that people don't vote up there no how, and he was a loose cannon that was loaded and rolling on deck, and the city council suspended him several occasions for racist remarks that he made while testifying in front of them. He was a real shooter.
And so he reflected, his posture and leadership reflected this willingness to decimate the idea, the memory, and the physical presence of anything that symbolized Black liberation, Black intellectual and cultural development in our community. So I make all that point to say that precinct is now headed by a Black man, Charlie Adams. And Charlie Adams, in a recent program, a presentation to the Hawthorne Neighborhood Council that I chair the monthly meetings of the Hawthorne Huddle, talked about a recent incident, and this is what's really different and what's important, where there was a robbery in St. Paul. The kid who did the robbery was chased by St. Paul police into North Minneapolis, this neighborhood where I am now, where I live, and was followed by St. Paul police. They handed it over to the authority of the Minneapolis police, and it was in Charlie Adams' precinct, 4th precinct, this neighborhood. And but the usual assets were called to the scene, meaning the SWAT team and the other emergency response capabilities that the city police department and the area police have. He said on our program, I didn't want another Black person killed. And I went to my colleagues and told them, we know who it is, where he is, he's holed up, he's threatening to kill himself. Let's see if we can talk him out of this and get him out. And they were able to get his parents, his father was from Mississippi, I think, got him on the phone. People that he knew, they contacted his mental health worker, obviously a person with mental health challenges, right? They made the connection and had that person talking to him. And finally, he was able to surrender and walk out. So they diffused the situation. And I'm pleased to tell this story because that's what should be happening all the time. There shouldn't be a rush to use deadly force if there's any alternative, and that these officers were capable, but his commitment as a resident of this neighborhood and as a product of this neighborhood was to make sure he could preserve life rather than, without thinking about it, take the shortcut and end the thing quickly. So that was a good story, and they deserve credit for it. We've written about it in the paper, and we'll do more about it in the future. The point I'm making is this. There are alternatives, and our people can make things happen differently, but that's not always the case, because you wonder about the situation you described in Ghana. That was Black people killing Black people. And you wonder about, even when there's Black-led law enforcement, sometimes the problem is that we code Black and white are still there. It's a question of authority that is not accountable, and people that are powerless, and some of which are able to or willing to break the law. And then what do you do? So I'm just throwing out some ideas. What do you think, Kamal? Unmute for me. Unmute.
My wife and I are seeing a lot of what we saw in Africa in America now. People selling water, more beggars on the street, And we saw this in Cote d'Ivoire in the early 90s. And now I'm seeing it in my neighborhood. Same thing I saw. People walking around half dressed. You know that they're mental. I saw that all the time in Abidjan. And now I'm seeing it in the Atlanta area. It's just so much going on. And I'm gonna give you this story. My chiropractor is a Nigerian. And you know, early last week in Nigeria, I don't even know if it was Boko Haram or whatever that name is, but some people went into a school and took some boys, kidnapped boys. And the government told the parents, y'all need to get security. You need to get security. And one of the things that I used to amaze me about Nigeria, in Lagos, the lawyers that I knew in Lagos, they paid their taxes, but they had to have their own everything. They had to have their own telephone system. They had to have their own generators. They had to have their own garbage collectors. Everything that they paid for, they had to have their own. All right. Now, when I told my chiropractor about these boys being kidnapped, his response was, the authorities know who's doing it, and they're part of it. They're getting paid. And I said the first part to say that, man, I hope it don't come down to that here in America. But what I see in America is that we're spiraling out of control. We're spiraling out. Brunel called me on Tuesday, very upset about the book that's coming out now about Millie.
I'm not up on it.
Millie is head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And Woodward, the reporter, has written a book. And this book details how the generals, Millie being the chief of staff, and you'll hear about it, it's headline news now. He called the general for China, his counterpart in China, and told them at the end of Trump's term that we're not, it's not going to be a war. We're not going to allow him to start a war with you guys, because that was one of the things that they were thinking about what he could do. And so I'm just saying that things are spiraling out of control. And with the way these Republicans are trying to downplay what happened on January 6th, it's the same thing that happened during after the Confederate War, the Civil War. The General Grant told them, give up your guns and go home. No punishment for treason. And it's the same thing that's happening with January 6th. That was treason. And no punishment. So I don't have a good feeling about where the country's going.
Kamal, 500 people have been arrested and charged for the January 6th incident, and they're having another event this weekend to celebrate the people who were there January 6th and consider them heroes.
They walk in the streets. They've been charged, but they walk in the streets on bond.
Yeah, they're putting fences around the Capitol as we speak.
Right.
Because they're coming back.
And so, given that, then Kamal, you said one of the problems in our community is that there are too many guns. So there's two dialogues going on. One is that we are using guns and acquiring them illegally, inappropriately, without training, without some kind of guidance, and they then fall into hands or where we misuse them against ourselves. Children, murdering children, adults, domestic violence, etc. So that narrative exists right now around the country. At the same time, you're hearing this discussion in national Black media, some people saying if you don't have a gun, you better go get one. And they're saying that in light of January 6th and the reemergence of those forces that remind us of what happened after Reconstruction.
Well, Al, you heard what Dave Chappelle said.
I did.
The only way they're going to deal with background checks and gun safety is if every eligible black man and woman in America goes downtown and gets a concealed carry permit. Then they'll implement background checks and classes and other requirements to put a lid on who's able to own a firearm. But it ain't going to happen until then.
No, I think that peace. There's got to be a pacifist movement. I just, in the country, around the world, this violence only begets more violence. And like you said, Al, my son-in-law told me I was crazy for not having a gun. And so he took us me and my wife to a gun show. And I was thinking, man, I don't really want to be around all these crackers with, buying these guns. But when we walked into the gun show, it was 90% black folk. 90% black folk buying guns.
Spending money hand over fist.
Yes. And Al, I've known close friends who were murdered and they had a gun.
Yeah.
They had a gun on them.
And they're killed.
Dr.
Hayden, alcohol, tobacco, drugs, and guns. That's a terrible cocktail. Talk about that if you would, and how it has a particular impact on our community, our families.
Yeah, I just wanted to also say that Tony Boza, the guy we was talking about, the police person, the movie that was made around him was the Bronx Zoo. That's what was happening with that, where he came from. That's the movie, Bronx Zoo. And he was there when that happened. Well, look, drug alcohol is not only a cocktail, but it's a disease in our community because of the educational piece where people can drop out. I couldn't drop out of school when I was growing up, at least to 16 years old. Now you just don't have to go to school and nobody's going to follow you. When I was growing up in Kansas City, they had a person named Truant. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you had the same one I had, but he was on you. And when I even went to De La Salle, which was a private school, a Catholic school, he was ready to.
I can't call his name, but I know who you're talking about. My sister-in-law's best friend is his daughter.
Oh, yeah. Okay. But he was ready to chastise me. I had to show him that, no, this is a holy day of obligation. Otherwise, man. And he was a light-skinned dude, had some different kind of hair. You got to know him because he was everywhere. And I couldn't understand, how do you get around this big city? But anyway, it's not only a cocktail, but it's a epidemic, it's a disease because you don't have people who are literate anymore, so they can't communicate as we're communicating right now. So they find the best way out, and that is a gun, a knife, whatever the case is, to get their point. There are people who, the way they talk, because they can't get to their point. And so they're not going to be belittled. They're a man, 12-year-old kid talking about, I'm a man.
Respect.
Give me respect. Those kind of things. That's right. And so I'm tired of seeing people at the point where tears are coming from their eyes as they killed someone. And the problem with it is to make you okay with the results that you did is drugs and alcohol. You see, then you can understand. I bet you the majority of people that's shooting around our city is high. They're high. They're
Yeah.
using drugs and alcohol. It's no question. And here we don't have enough treatment program from a cultural standpoint that can help them understand what they're doing is you may have not gotten it early in your life, but we're here to help you. We can solve that. Turning Point is basically a treatment program that teaches about revolution. And we talk about before you get to the drugs and alcohol, let's look at the issues that you're having. Mm-hmm. If you don't have someone, because we don't have elders anymore, we don't have the people who we used to sit down, like Fuzzy Brock. Mm-hmm. What's in Kansas City? What did your cousin? He started under the
Bernard Powell.
Yeah, but the organization, huh?
SAC 20, Social Action Committee of 20.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And who was in the leadership of that?
Yep.
Your elders.
Yep.
So when you got ready to go out there and gangbang or whatever the case is, you had someone to say, think about these steps. Just like I teach my people the steps to the liquor store. And usually Mickey's is right down the street. So let's say it's 1,000 steps to get to Mickey's. Then I can tell you what you should be thinking about as you walk towards the liquor store in steps where halfway there, you turn around. Because you taught yourself that this doesn't make sense. Why am I doing this? What's going to happen? What's the outcome of all these kinds of things? So drugs and alcohol is there, and it's there simply because it's another way to control. And that's what we talk about at Turning Point. We talk about controlling. Why would you let, I was saying to someone, why is it a liquor store in the city, but it's a spirit shop in the suburbs?
Let's hold it right there. We're out of time. I want to ask Yusef to weigh in quickly. I get lots of feedback, Yusef, for people being thankful of the books you mentioned and going to libraries and going to bookstores to buy. So I wanted to let you know that, number one, and ask you, what are you reading right now? What should people be looking at?
I'm just finishing up Eddie Glaude's Begin Again about James Baldwin, and he used James Baldwin's quotes to talk about where we've been and how we got to where we're at, and to provide a prescription for where we need to go from here.
Yes.
And Eddie Glaude wrote another book, a collection of essays called Black Power and Black Nationalism, that I'm looking forward to reading next. And I've been exploring YouTube, and I am just fascinated. I was watching a documentary last night by Chester Higgins Jr., the photographer. Mm-hmm. His father was the official photographer for the NAACP, and he took photographs for Look, Time, Life. Just an incredible brother. Mm-hmm. And his perspective is black as black can be. And he said he wants his legacy to be that he portrayed black people with dignity, integrity, and graciousness. And if he has 36 frames on a roll of film, he shoots all 36 of them with that understanding. Because if he only shoots 35, they will publish the 36th one every time.
Hey, books, you want books? The Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois. Mm-hmm. The Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois. And I think I mentioned this before. It's called The Second. The Second. And it's by Carl Anderson. And it's about the Second Amendment and how it impacts black people. The Second Amendment, is the one on the guns.
And for new people just tuning in, please get The Blood of Emmett Till, because we are all Emmett Till's children. It's by Timothy Tyson. It's a paperback. It's an easy read. It's incredible. Okay. It's the history of racism for the last 150 years for dummies. Okay.
Who's the author?
Blood of Emmett Till. Timothy Tyson. No relation to Mike Tyson.
Okay.
He's a history professor at the University of Madison. Incredible book. Absolutely incredible. Yeah.
Well, this is Rich. Let's do it again next week. We'll see you guys. Take care.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kamal, Dr. Hayden. Take care. I'm Al
Be safe.
McFarlane. We'll see you.
Thank you.
All right.
Oh, Queen Justice, where are you? Did they beat you up or no? Lock you on the ground, take the crown away from you?
Oh, Lady Liberty, red, white, and blue. Did they take your dignity with their bigotry? Teach you that you're born to lose.
Free or guilty, it's gonna get filthy. Better believe, roll up your sleeves. It's gonna get rough, it's gonna be tough. We all agree, we've had enough.
We've had enough
Of all the rules you break,
We've had enough
of all the money you make.
We've had enough
No more life at stake.
We've had enough.
This is a proclamation.
It's been 400 years and we're 400 late. Together we stand from state to state. Going back in time won't make America great. We need justice now, people won't wait.
Action, no more distraction. Every step we take, we gain traction. If it can happen to one, it can happen to all. United we stand, divided we fall. Free or guilty, it's gonna get filthy. Better believe, roll up your sleeves. It's gonna get rough, it's gonna be tough. We all agree, we've had enough.
We've had enough
Of all the rules you were breaking.
We've had enough
Of all the money you were making.
We've had enough
No more life gets taken.
We've had enough
This is a proclamation.
Free or guilty,
It's gonna get filthy.
you better believe. Just roll up your sleeves.
It's gonna get rough. It's gonna be tough.
We all agree, we've had enough. We've had enough
Of all the rules you're breaking.
We've had enough
All the money you're making.
We've had enough
No more life gets taken.
We've had enough
This is the proclamation.
We've had enough
Trayvon Martin and Tommy Rice.
We've had enough
Michael Brown and Eric gonna pay the price.
We've had enough
Philando, Breonna, George Floyd.
What? We've had enough
So many gone, how can we fill the void?
How could we feel
We had enough.
void?
John Crawford, I know you've heard.
We've had enough
Sandra Bland, come on and take a stand.
We've had enough
Sean Bell,
Sean Bell.
what the hell?
We've had enough
Freddie Gray, did you hear what I said?
We've had enough
This is a proclamation.